Hi everyone, I'm Amanda Duffy, and today we're going to be doing a couple more grammar lessons. So this one is going to be on comma rules. Okay, so our next category video that we're going to do is on comma rules. And so there's 5 basic categories of comma rules. We're going to go through each of them with a little explanation and then a couple examples. Okay, so the first category of comma rules is going to be on items that are in a list. So this is usually referring to 3 or more items that the writer is listing out. So for example, apples, bananas, and oranges. And then there is some confusion about this comma right here in between the second and third items in a list, and it's known as the Oxford comma. And the SAT and ACT, they're not going to try and trick you about it. That won't be like an answer choice where it's like one like this and then one without the comma. They're going to have it pretty consistent throughout the whole test. Okay, so our second comma rule is going to be using commas to set off in a positive. And so what an appositive is it's a phrase or a couple words that are going to modify the subject that comes before it. So in this case, it would be like Alex, a great first baseman, and the rest of the sentence. And then the part that's going to be the appositive is a great first baseman. And when you do have an appositive, you're going to set it off using double commas, a comma before it and a comma after it. And you want to make sure that that's parallel. If there's a comma before, there's a comma after. There can also be other ways of doing it where you can have a dash before and a dash after. As long as it's the same both ways, then you're good to go. Okay, so our third comma rule is going to be using commas to separate 2 independent clauses that are joined by a coordinating conjunction. So a good way to remember coordinating conjunctions and recognize them really fast is by using the acronym FANBOYS, which stands for and, nor, but, or, yet, so, and they're listed out right there. And then something else to remember when looking at this comma rule is that in order for something to be considered an independent clause, it has to have a subject, verb, and complete thought. So for example, in this first example sentence, you have John went shopping and went for a run. Now the reason you're not going to use a comma in between these 2 clauses is because the second clause doesn't actually have a subject. So while this one says John went shopping, John is the subject, went is the verb, and the complete thought is John went shopping. However, the second part of the sentence, and went for a run, doesn't actually have a subject. So therefore, this is just 2 different actions that he's completing that wouldn't need a comma to join them. On this fourth example, you have Maria has to go shopping and she plans to leave in 20 minutes. So because you have Maria as the subject, and then has to go as the verb, and then shopping, that's your first sentence, your first independent clause, and then you have and, she is the subject, plans is the verb, to leave in 20 minutes. So that's going to be your second independent clause, and it's joined by your fanboys word and. Okay, so the fourth comma rule is kind of tied in with the third one, and it's watch out for a comma splice or a run-on sentence. So that would occur when you have 2 independent clauses, so subject, verb, and complete thought, but no fanboys word to separate them. So for example, using that same sentence from the last example, we have Maria has to go to the store, she plans to leave in 20 minutes. This is actually not correct because you need to have something separating these 2 independent clauses. So in this case, you could either add in a fanboys word, such as and, or you could even make it 2 separate sentences by putting a period here and capitalizing she. Okay, so our fifth and final comma rule is use a comma between a dependent clause and an independent clause. So as I said before, the independent clause is going to have the subject, verb, and complete thought. The dependent clause, on the other hand, will not express a complete thought, and it's usually indicated by a subordinating conjunction. And examples of those are when, because, while, although, before, and then there's a couple more that I didn't list out here. If you want a complete list, you can just Google subordinating conjunctions, and I'm sure you'll find some more. So usually when these types of sentences, it's going to be the dependent clause comes first. And that's when you would need a comma in between the dependent and independent. So for example, while Jenna was at practice, she scored 2 goals. So if you were to read the dependent clause alone, while Jenna was at practice, it's indicating that there's more to follow, and so if you just left it like that, it wouldn't really express a complete thought because the reader's going to be like, well, what happens when she was at practice? And that would be fulfilled by the independent clause. She scored 2 goals. Now the sentence could also be structured like Jenna scored 2 goals while she was at practice. In this case, you wouldn't need a comma in between the dependent and the independent clause. And that's it for the comma rules. If you guys have any more questions about specific answers or questions that you see, make sure to email us and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you.